All right, I propose to kick it off by welcoming you all. Welcome at the webinar, The Blending Requirements on Their Way. Now what? We're very happy to see so many of you. We as organizers of COAST, Cirmar, and the Circular Plastic Initiative, a shared initiative by the Institute for Sustainable Process Technology and the Dutch Polymer Institute, thought it was a good idea to organize a webinar like this right now and right here. We are happy to see that so many of you agree on that and were enthusiastic enough to share some of your time to this webinar. And hopefully we can fulfill your expectations and make it worthwhile. We organize this because we have an ambition, and our ambition is to reduce the current uncertainty and unclarity that looms amongst many of us, to debunk some myths, and also to provide oversight and insight in the circular plastic domain, and with a specific focus on the upcoming blending requirements. And we truly believe that it is needed to accelerate in this domain, despite the developments we see happening around us. And we are very eager to initiate and to facilitate actions that we think that are necessary to be prepared for what's coming our way. My name is Geoffrey Schouten. I'm a program manager of the Circular Plastic Initiative, and today I act as your moderator and chair of this event. And once again, welcome and happy to see so many of you. And before I further introduce today's topic and the agenda, I would like to share a few remarks up front. First of all, the plenary part of this webinar is being recorded, so people can re-watch it later, or we can share it, or you can share it amongst other interested people. But the breakout sessions, which will be in the second part of this webinar, are not recorded. And we do that for a reason, because we want you to speak freely and feel safe to speak up and share your ideas and questions. And to make us all feel safe in that way, we propose to use the Chatham House rules during the breakout sessions. And for those who are not familiar with that, it basically means that all the information that is shared is free to be shared to the public domain, but we ask you to refrain from disclosing the sender of that information. So once again, all data is free to be shared, but please do not tell who gave you that specific information or who posed a specific question. Having said that, questions are very welcome. But we would like you to save your questions for the breakout sessions, because we want them to be as interactive as possible. And there's plenty of time and room to share your questions there with our experts. But if you have a very urgent question anyway, you see in the top of your screen a questions and answers icon where you can also post your questions. And in case we do not have time in this webinar to answer it, we have the opportunity to get back to you and provide you with an answer or a response to your question. If you have anything else than a question, which, let's say, a remark, you can put it in the chat, also on the top of your screen, where you have an icon for chat. All right, that brings me to the agenda of today. As you've seen, I will, after this agenda, very shortly introduce you to the topic. And then after that, we have 80 minutes of what we've called plenary talks. And we are very happy and, well, even proud that we were able to find four deep experts in this domain available and willing to support us in this webinar and share their perspective on the blending requirements, which we will go into shortly. Then we allow for a short break of 10 minutes, and after that, the breakout sessions will start. Well, technically, we will go to another meeting for that, and we will once again explain it to you when we are there. But these breakout sessions will be organized in a different session or different Teams environment than this one. And during the break, we as organization will put direct links and also a list of participants for the specific breakouts in the chat section of this webinar session. So you can directly click on that link, and you will be taken to that specific environment where you will enter a breakout session of your choice with the expert that is hosting that specific breakout session. At the end of the breakout session, which is around 12:15, we will reconvene in this central meeting again. And once again, in the chat, we will provide you with a link which takes you directly back to this meeting. And there we will have a wrap-up and conclusions. Having said that, a short introduction of the topic for today. A lot is happening around us, and there is fierce debate, I would say, on the blending requirements, and maybe more specifically, I think many of you will know the Nationale Circulaire Plastic Norm, the National Circular Plastic Norm, the NCPN, and a plastic tax that were looming over our heads in the Netherlands specifically. Quite recently, it was decided by our politicians that we will no longer go on with that legal obligation. And to replace that, a circular plastic table has been established and organized, where the domain has been given the opportunity and the responsibility to come up with better ideas, because many of the stakeholders in the domain were not too happy with the national norm and with the plastic tax. So now it's upon ourselves to come up with better ideas, and Rob will dive deeper into the details in his perspective in a few minutes from now. So I will further leave it to him. But to add into the debates, our director, Tjeerd Jongsma, recently communicated through an article that he feels that stopping the plastic tax is a good thing, because it will open up the door for a cleaner way of recycling. And by putting the tax to the waste management companies and to the incinerators, it will, according to him, open the door for gasification instead of incineration. And gasification is seen by many of us as a recycling technology, keeping the carbon in the loop and make it available for producing recycled plastics again. But only, I think this was yesterday or the day before, a big Dutch newspaper, the waste management company, and more specifically the incinerators, I would almost say, countered that and gave their perspective. They think putting the tax on the incineration of waste is not a good idea, because in the end of the day, it will all end up in the wallet of us as consumers. So I would almost say game on. As always, so many people, so many stakeholders, so many opinions, but it's for us as all the stakeholders in the domain to come up with proper solutions and to really get this going. And then we are not alone, of course, and there's more happening around us in the world. So we as a circular plastic domain are also affected by all kinds of developments and global trends that hit us, and that we have to have answers to. If you look at the top left corner, you see two pictures, a polar bear and a turtle swimming in the sea, which represent basically the environmental challenge we have, the kind of way we live and the business we do. In the linear economy we currently still predominantly have, we emit way too much CO2, which is causing the climate crisis we are currently facing. But there's of course also a littering and pollution problem linked to plastics. If we just throw it away, not in a bin, but just somewhere on the streets, in the end of the day, it ends up in our ecosystem with all kinds of nasty effects, which we definitely want to prevent. Then in the bottom left corner, it's also cannot be new to you. We are in a big geopolitical turmoil. There's a lot going on. The world is getting more and more polarized. Tariff barriers are being raised. Supply chains are being disturbed, which in the end of the day only leads to higher costs. So the affordability of our way of living and the way we want to use and buy products is becoming more and more difficult. Then in the upper right corner, you see a picture by Nova Institute. And the message I want to convey with this picture basically is that there will be, according to expectations, a very big increase in our demand for products and also for plastic products. You almost see it more than double over the next 25 to 30 years. And at the same time, we agreed we want to move away from fossil feedstock. And if we want to move away from fossil feedstock, we need to find other feedstock to produce plastics. And then in the bottom part of the right pillar, you see that more than 50% is based on recycling. So we need to keep our products and the carbon in the loop in order to be able to produce new plastics that are produced from old plastics that ended up in the end of life phase. And this also refers to what many of us call strategic autonomy. If we want to move away from our dependency from fossil fuels and dependency from other regions and countries in the world, we need to be more self-sufficient in sourcing our feedstocks and getting a hold of our waste in order to use it as feedstock for our products is a means to do that. And last but not least, in the bottom right corner, regulations, rules and regulations. And that's what we focus on here in this webinar. Blending requirements are part of upcoming regulations like the PPWR, but also from all kinds of EPR schemes. And one of the reasons for imposing that is to create a market pool, a demand creation. So those are just a few global drivers that have a big impact on the topic that we are discussing today. And if you want to read a nice, balanced story, which also reflects on these kind of topics, I would like to refer you to a column written by Frans Bekkers in English, No European Reindustrialization Without a Circular Economy. After this webinar, we will share the slides, and this, if you click on this one, you are taken directly to that column. Okay, rounding up. This webinar is organized and we have an ambition to provide practical answers rather than providing theoretical solutions. So we in Aspire, and we have the ambition to answer these kind of questions for you over the next 2.5 hours. And it's up for you to decide in the end of the webinar if we succeeded. All right, I will wrap it up. We will go to our experts, who will share, each of them from their own perspective, how they look at this particular topic. And obviously I prepared a little bit, and I was quite impressed because we have far over 100 years of accumulated experience with these 4 people alone. And we will start with Rob Verhagen, who is a sustainability strategist, a change agent, circular expert, and chief of story, according to his LinkedIn profile, and his key job purpose, and I like it, that's why I read it out from my screen: translating the external trends in packaging and sustainability to a strong and coherent innovation portfolio, as well as public affairs strategy for the industry. More than 30 years of experience. If I read up correctly, only 5 years in plastic in this particular domain, but already holding a lot of critical and influential positions in the plastics and circular plastics domain, amongst which a role in the circular plastic table. Well, Rob, I would very much would like to invite you to take over from me and share your perspective on the domain.
Yes, thank you, Geoffrey, and thanks for the introduction. I will take you into a small journey of what's happening in the legal landscape, but also what's happening in Dutch you say flankerend beleid, but what's happening in the periphery of all these things. And during the breakout, we'll go into more detail. So I think in the end, it's all about dilemmas. We need to make choices. And sometimes when you make a choice in one direction, that has an impact somewhere else. Well, I've been introduced already, and I see the slide has changed a little bit in the layout, but that's all right. So I'm the sustainability director, but I'm also the president of the Dutch Brands Association and AKA Verpakkingen. But I'm also chairing STIMO, and STIMO, Stichting Materiaalorganisaties, is a branch association where actually competing materials are coming together. So that's where plastic, paper, carton, wood, glass, and metal come together to join forces and to see what are the right ways forward to actually drive sustainability and circularity. In that context, I'm also in the Dutch EPR organization, one of the board advisors, and since last week, I'm the chair of one of the plastic tafel sub committees, specifically on norm and market creation. And the steam train is rolling very, very quickly, but I'll come to that, back to that in a minute. And I'm involved in some other things. Anyway, just very quickly for you to understand, the OPAC Group is a family-owned business where I'm working for a sustainability director. We have 10 production locations in the Netherlands, and we make paper and plastic materials for lots of different applications. We have about 700 people, 70,000 tons production. So the impact that we have as a company is huge, and we see that actually the impact is high on our CO2 footprint, but that's why we use green electricity. But in the end, it's those 70,000 tons of materials that we put on the market. That's where our impact is, and that's why we need to reduce the CO2 LCA impact as much as we can. The key questions that we get is, well, yeah, give me a sustainable packaging. And then the question is, what do you mean with sustainability? Is it LCA? Is it circular? Is it no packaging? Is it recyclable? Is it the packaging recyclable? Is it biodegradable? So there's lots of different views, and it's very difficult to give a one standpoint. So if you're making bags for products that have a very high LCA, if you have very nice beef packaging, then actually prolonging the shelf life of that beef might actually be best, because the sustainable packaging then is prolonging the shelf life. If you make packaging for chemicals, actually preventing loss and damage and leakage to the environment might be part of that sustainability as well. And that's one of the things that we see, that in the whole debate on this moment, and certainly in the area of packaging, the politicians are focusing on packaging as a waste product, whereas actually we produce all these products because they have a means and a purpose. And I think that's something that we need to make sure that we take into consideration. Now, if you look at legislation in the area of packaging, the key challenges that we face is really three things. One is waste. So what is the waste management story? What is the littering and behavior change that we need to do? The second one is CO2 emissions, and that's where spoilage, shelf life extensions, but also what kind of electricity do we use? What is the LCA? What can we do in that area? And last but not least, we are seeing overconsumption of raw materials as a key issue. Now, the way forward, therefore, is really to move from the linear economy to a circular economy. And in that circular economy, we make waste into a raw material, we reduce CO2 significantly, and we use the materials again. Now, in the area, how can we actually drive sustainability? How can we make sure that actually companies and our clients are doing it? And what we do see is that the most effective way is doing that through regulatory purposes, because it drives a level playing field. We also see that voluntary commitments, branch plans and customer demands have a huge impact, but it requires a strong strategy and a strong vision. So we saw that Unilever, for instance, had a very strong vision going forward, but we see that due to pressure of different stakeholders and shareholders, they actually had to lower those commitments. So voluntary commitments are cool, but they do not always deliver. I think intrinsic motivation and corporate branding are important, and some companies do very well on that, but sometimes when the economy changes, that might have some impact as well. And the changing perspectives from the consumers are very important. However, the consumer tends to be ill-informed and quite erratic in their decision making. So driving your strategy based on consumer is not always the right way forward. Now, what we do see is that yes, if we go back, and everyone is talking on this moment about the PPWR, but we're forgetting that we had the PPWD, the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive from 1994. And in 1994, they already had quite a good dossier, and basically they said packaging should be safe, and we're doing that, and that's why REACH and all the food contact material legislation is coming through, and that's great. But the other two elements were already there as well. So one was minimize packaging material use, but also minimize the environmental impact of the packaging. And the text is good. The one thing that was really lacking in this element is that companies needed to comply unless there was a good marketing reason. Basically, those two areas, but minimal material use and environmental impact, focusing on recycling, recyclability, etc. You didn't need to do that if there was a good marketing reason. And I think that was the flaw in the Packaging Waste Directive from 1994. However, one of the things that was already in that directive is that companies need to have a packaging dossier to actually show that they're complying to it. So therefore, do you minimize your packaging? Does your packaging really have environmental impact? Is it recyclable? So that's already an obligation since 1994, and I'll come back to that when we talk about the packaging waste regulation. But the packaging waste regulation is not the only thing. So this is a summary of the field that is facing us on this moment. So the legislative landscape has become very complex. It has become very complex from Europe, but on top of that, we have a lot of country-specific measures, and we'll talk about blending requirements in the Netherlands in a minute. But we do see that every country in this moment is putting up great ideas to drive sustainability, but they all do it in a different way. They all require different data. They all require different measure points, the different certification, and that makes transport of goods in the EU more complex. Now, the European legislative landscape is very complex, and during the breakout, we'll dive into that a bit more, or how you get the overview. However, if you look at the European Green Deal, it's actually quite comprehensive. So therefore, if you're doing good, then you can make a claim. But we saw that a lot of companies were making claims on things that were not inherently sustainable. So therefore, the Green Claims Directive came in. And we see the ECGT, Empowering Consumers for the Green Transition, is also a piece of legislation that actually is preventing green claims to go to the consumers in a good way. We'll have in another breakout a discussion about a digital product passport and the ESPR. So we do see actually that although it's very complex, a lot of this legislation is holding hands and actually is enforcing each other. Now, if you look at the national legislation in the Netherlands, as Jeffrey already alluded to, we had the circular norm and the plastic levy or the plastic tax. Both had very good intentions. The real issue with both legislations that they were only referring to products produced in the Netherlands. And therefore, we were seeing that the leakage to countries outside the Netherlands would be huge, between 30 and 50%, and therefore would it actually not help the circular industry in the Netherlands, but it might actually go the other way around. So basically, these two have stopped, but now we have the plastic tafel, and Steven van Eyck is our special envoy for circular economy, and basically he's leading the session, and we have now an objective. One is to make sure that we have normative or pricing measures as an alternative to the plastic table, to the plastic norm and the plastic levy. They should be supported and feasible. We should have them ready before the August decision making, so for Prinsjesdag, as we say in the Netherlands. But that basically means we need to inform our politicians before the 30th of June, which means that the recommendations should be ready on the 10th of June, which is very quick. And then there are a lot of measures. So we need to reduce CO2, we need to use circular material, bio-based and recycled material. It should deliver tax money. So it's quite a bunch of, and it's a hairy and complex world. If we're not able to allocate the funds somewhere else, then basically burning waste will probably have to pay most of the tax, which might have some negative effects as well. Now, how does this link then to European legislation? Well, actually, a lot of the things that we're trying to get into is already fixed in the packaging and packaging waste regulation. Now, the packaging waste regulation is quite a hairy and complex piece of paper and legislation, but I've summarized it for you on one page. And basically, we can go into details during the break. And this is about recyclability by design. And that means that the packaging should be recyclable, but also an infrastructure should be in place to be able to recycle those packaging. There's a mandate of the use of recycled content, and this is the topic of today. But also there is a further focus on safety, where a whole range of additives is no longer allowed. And there's a debate about compostable, and therefore compostable packaging is only allowed in some formats. There's a very complex piece around reuse and refill, with some very smart and sound measures, but also some recommendations that are still another debate, but we'll talk about that in the break. There's a whole piece of waste minimization, both on the packaging type, where the packaging producer is responsible, but also by country. And this is where there is a target now for 2030 of 5% packaging reduction, but that's compared to 2018. So compared to the current figure, we need to reduce in 2013 10% of our packaging waste. And there's a whole range of packaging formats that will be banned. It's a regulation, should be harmonized. And here it comes, the conformity assessment is now compulsory. A lot of companies are saying, oh, there's a lot of red tape, but I think companies are forgetting that conformity assessment, or the packaging dossier, was already compulsory since 1994. So companies that haven't done their work yet should step up their game. And there is a whole debate about harmonized labeling and QR codes and waste management criteria. So therefore, that's the PPWR. It's complex, but actually, for us as a packaging industry, this is much better than having 27 member states all come up with their own measures and guidances and recommendations. So actually, as a packaging industry, we should be saying, well, this is helping us instead of hindering us. Now, I'm not going to dwell into detail here because of time, but what we do see, if we look in the area of plastic packaging, and this is chemistry 2.0. We start on the left with crude oil that goes into naphtha, because we burn most of it in diesel and petrol and kerosene, but the naphtha is a byproduct that goes into monomers. We polymerize that, we make that into plastic pellets. Those plastic pellets are made into products, and actually interesting, the reprocessed materials, so the side cuts or the off-spec materials that we make for our clients, in the old plastic tax, that was declassified as recycled material. In the plastic tax from this year onwards in the UK, that's now no longer seen as recycled material. Obviously, you can then reuse things, which is important, but the end is, how do we use recycled materials? Well, we don't want it to end up in the environment. We don't want it to end up in landfill. We do not want to burn it, so therefore recycling is important. Now, if we look at the different recycling technologies, they're all good, but everything needs to be mechanical recycled, and only after mechanical recycling, it can go into dissolution, depolymerization, or back to feedstock. But we should be really looking at, and this is part of the PPWR, what is a sustainable, sustainably sourced recycled material? So what is the LCA? How do we make sure that we actually use the right material and that we make use of the right recycled materials in the future. And we can have a debate on that in the breakout. And we shouldn't forget that there's a lot of new innovations coming our way, and certainly for the bio-based polymers, for instance, enzyme technology could be a good way forward. So the whole use of recycled materials is going on all these different aspects, and there's lots of different players that have different perspectives here. Now, more on that during the break, but what I think is important, if we talk about documentation, there is a whole list of things that we need to put in those conformity assessments. And during the break, we can have a bit of a debate about what it means, how do you apply that, and how do we go forward. To finish off, even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. So I think we see there is a lot of great innovation taking place. There's lots of great initiatives, but the requirements in the countries in Europe, individual, but plus European legislation, are going quick. So it's time for action. Geoffrey, I'll give it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Very insightful and very clear to see how complex it is and the size of the task we're up to. But also happy to see that that you share ways forward, and also are willing to allude on that further in the breakout session. Thanks again. Then I will introduce Harry Philipsen, our next speaker. He's a senior scientist, polymer analytics and project manager, plastic recycling at Envalior, and an executive board member of TI Coast. But also he has a strong affinity with mentoring and teaching. And in recent years, he was caught by the fascinating world of plastic recycling. So I think that is a great list of specifications, so to speak, Harry, for you to be an excellent expert to take us into the details of characterization and analytics.
Okay, thank you very much for this very nice introduction. And indeed, okay, I'm missing a slide here. No problem. There was a slide on the introduction of myself, but actually Geoffrey already told the story. I'm working for Envalior. Envalior is a relatively new company, founded 2 years ago via the legacies of both DSM and Lanxess in terms of engineering plastics. So the businesses were merged. We're now a company with a turnover of 4 billion a year and 4,000 employees, of which 300 plus are working in R&D. And sustainability is one of the key assets, I would say, of Envalior. Now, talking about recycling of plastics. And by the way, I will talk a bit about analytics and characterization in the coming 20 minutes. And why is that needed? Well, we need to strongly enhance the information value of our recycled feedstock, which is needed to increase the volume in the end of recycled feedstock. And that is needed, both the volume and the information value, in order to comply to all regulations, which have been briefly touched upon by the previous speaker already. And in the end, we want not only to comply to regulations, but also to create more value and more business. And as France always advocates, to get more independent from other regions from a raw materials perspective. Now, talking about plastic recycling, I always tell people we have 2 big challenges. And the first one is dealing with impurities. That's actually a no-brainer. Recycled material is not as pure as virgin materials. And economies of scale, getting sufficient material of sufficient constant quality for a next use application. Now, that volume of scale I always illustrate by this example. That is a typical example, a challenge where we as Envalior are dealing with. We are strong in the automotive industry. And when you look at an average car, then you will find that it consists of about 30,000 parts, of which 10,000 different parts are made up of plastics. And that's not only the same plastic for all applications. No, there are more than 500 different compounds, so plastic types, in a modern car, and spread over various applications, various small pieces, sometimes a bit larger, but in the end, mainly small pieces. Now, you can imagine that that is an enormous challenge if you want to recycle that material. Yes, we want to do that because we are obliged to that. We do want to comply to sustainability ambitions. But if you consider then the enormous amount of different compounds spread over in an enormous amount of cars spread all over the world, and also consider the fact that an average car has a lifetime of 15 years, yeah, you can imagine that recycling comes with a lot of challenges. So the question is then, how can we indeed enhance the volume of certain plastic types, how to get sufficient volume of sufficient quality and sufficient constancy? How can we work on classification and the quality of those various materials, and how can we verify the origin? Do we know what it is comprised of? Now, origin, classification, quality are very key for the success of plastic recycling, and we at PI Coast believe that a combination of analytics, nomenclature, so being uniform in the coding of materials, and a digital product passports are very crucial for the success of each step actually in this whole recycling chain. And an example is given in the picture here. You have various steps to get to recycled materials, but the combination of analytics, nomenclature, and the digital product passports, we think, is crucial for its success. Now, talking about analytics, where does it come in plastic recycling? Of course, in all the steps, but all those steps are processes, and processes can be relatively new because we are dealing with new type of dealing with materials. Now, development and optimization of processes that's actually known for many years, of course, goes with a lot of analytics. Analytics provides you insight in how processes are running. And as an example, I'm leading a project on chemical recycling of polyamide 6. We are blind without analytics. We learn from analytics how processes run, what's the efficiency, what's the purity of materials. So that's very essential. But another big challenge is connecting, in the end, a specific composition of feedstock, of a recyclate, to next use applications. Now, we are very much used to product specifications, and for virgin materials, that is actually, I would say, as a result of the many years of research and work, is quite simple. We have virgin specs, and those specs are guaranteed more or less by the quality of the underlying processes, but that no longer works for recycled materials because we have new processes and we have a varying composition. So connecting composition to next use applications is actually a big challenge, and there analytics has a pivotal role. And in the end, it's not only about the product specifications, but it's also about safety requirements, especially when you get to context applications, but also in a generalistic way. For Envalior, sustainability counts high, and we also need to ensure that there are no substances of high concern in our material. And in the end, it's all analytics to safeguard that. Now, properties, of course, strongly depend on composition. Here's an example taken from the University of Maastricht, where it is shown what is the impact of certain properties in recyclates that contain a certain amount of polypropylene in high-density polyethylene. And as you can see, some properties are just the weighted average between the individual properties. For instance, if you look at the blue line, the modulus, well, it is predictable. But if you look at, for instance, the elongation at break, you see a very strong dependence of small amounts of polypropylene being present in high-density polyethylene. So depending on the properties that are relevant for you, the final specifications can vary to a large extent. Now, as an example, how are we dealing with that at Envalior? Because in our product, Aquilon Repurposed, we do use mechanically recycled polyamides. And actually for us, it's also a search on how to deal with that. So it all started with estimation based on knowledge that we've developed over the past decades, which type of impurities might be relevant for us, and which we at least need to monitor. Now, based on that assessment, you start monitoring the composition of the feedstock that you are dealing with, and then step by step build up this knowledge, and that gradually get to functional specs. Now, in the case of polyamides, we decided to look at moisture, to look at ash. Ash is relevant for, let's say, non-soluble and inorganic impurities. We look at the molar mass of the solution viscosity, which tells a bit about the chain length and whether it is still in a range that we needed to have it for our mechanical properties. We look at overall organic composition, at elemental composition, metals, which can, in some cases, not be allowed. We look at volatiles and semi-volatiles that could escape from our material during processing or lifetime, and crystallinity and melting behavior are very much important from a functional perspective. Is this sufficient? We don't know yet, but we started to monitor and we are learning step by step, and that is actually how it will work. A second example comes from Jeroen Jansen from the Radboud University, also present in this call. And Jeroen and his team did very nice work by distinguishing feedstock of polyurethanes which can be either cross-linked or non-cross-linked. And the thing, of course, is that the processing of cross-linked and non-cross-linked polyurethanes is a very different one. So if you want to go to next use applications, you need to separate, you need to distinguish those materials. Jeroen developed a model by which he can distinguish those two types of materials by near-infrared spectroscopy. And as a result, here you see the result of an analysis by multivariate data analysis. Red ones cross-linked, green ones non-cross-linked. If you can do this in an online setting, then you can, in an online way, discriminate between cross-linked, non-cross-linked, and have it landed in different buckets, literally. And then you can end up, apparently, with materials that are 93 or even 100% pure when it comes to non-cross-linked materials. Well, needless to say that this creates enormous value for your business. In a mixed sense, it's very difficult to deal with it. In a separated sense, it's really new material that can be processed towards new applications. So really value creation. Now, a challenge. Analytics is important. I hope I've showed you that, but the standardization in that world is still in its infancy, meaning that everybody does this characterization in its own way, making the intercomparability very low. There are some first standards available based on various analytical techniques, but still many steps need to be made. Then I will get to my conclusions. How should we move on with analytics for plastic recycling? I think I told you that analytics provides very valuable insights in the functional specifications and how to set them up for recycled feedstock. It improves the information value and thereby creates value for your business. I think that we developed over the past decades an enormous toolbox for characterizing plastic materials, both in a functional and in a chemical way. My personal feeling is that that toolbox is very much sufficient to meet the things that we need to deal with currently. I don't think we need to get to entirely new tools, although of course we are entering a new application area, so some development will be needed. And I also think, I'm convinced, and we see that happening now, that modeling, dealing with AI, especially for instance in online sorting processes, that will be a very important step to bring analytics up to the level where we can deal with the plastic challenges. In practice, it will often be a route where we start in the lab with complex analytics to learn about the critical parameters in a specific application, and then of course try to translate it to more, I would say, simple to use sensory that can be used in, for instance, inline sorting processes. I think this is the route that we need to go, but we urgently need to establish qualification routes, establish the way towards it, the methodologies for it, and for that we need concrete use cases. And that is also one of the goals of today. Together with you, we want to discover what next steps we can make in that respect. And with that, I hand over again to Jeffrey.
Thank you very much, Harry, for sharing your insights and taking us with you in the challenges that you have by changing the feedstock from a well-known and very uniform feedstock to switching to plastic waste as a feedstock, and the challenges that bring, but also the pivotal role that analysis and characterization can play there. And looking forward to the breakout session to dive even deeper and get more practical examples. All right, that takes us to the next speaker, which is Gerrit Klein-Nagelvoort, Manager of Business Development at Veolia Polymers, and I would say a very well-known and multi-decade experienced professional in the plastics and polymers domain. Gerrit, I hope you have managed to take control over the presentation, and I would very much like to invite you to take us with you in your experience and elucidate to us some practical business cases that you run into, I would say, on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, thank you, Jeffrey. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind introduction. My name is Gerrit Klein-Nagelvoort, studied chemistry ages ago and started my first job in polyamide recycling. So that makes now with the 35 years at Veolia Polymers make the total for 40 years of experience in plastics recycling. So I've seen some things, done some things, and see a lot of things changed, one for the good and others, of course, for the bad. I will take you into the practical situation. I will show you some examples and some challenges we are facing in the plastics recycling. This is our plant, which is in Vroomshoop. It's the eastern part of the Netherlands. We are mainly dealing with polypropylene, and we do recycle 45,000 tons a year. Veolia is Veolia Polymers, part of the big Veolia Environment, which is at the stock exchange in France. Veolia also is member of all kind of organizations to avoid pollution and plastic in the ocean or in the environment. We have 36 recycling sites in 14 countries. 8 of them produce food contact quality recyclate, which is mostly PET, in one case HDPE for milk bottles. I've been told we are the biggest mechanical recycler in the world, and we do 650,000 tons, which is a drop compared to the consumption of 400 million tons virgin plastics. But you need to start small, I would say. We collected and gathered all the recycling activities under the brand name Plastiloop. And here you see an overview. We have concentrates in Europe and Asia, and since a couple of years, since a year, I need to say, in South America as well, LDPE recycling in Colombia. This is exactly the slide that has been shown. It's in another form how the plastic recycling should work. And then from collection, we have the sorting, and then it goes into the plastic recycling facility, which we will look at closer for our plants in Vroomshoop. As mentioned, the 400 million tons consumption of plastics each year, and if we are talking about sustainability, only the small part in the left upper top is sustainable, which is mechanical recycled. Now we can have a look at bio-based, which is 0.5, and chemical recycling, it's even less. So it's a long way to go. We need to stop the fossil-based, and we are working on that. PP, you can see in this graph, is very much available. 15% of all the plastics used is coming from is PP. So in that area we are active. What is the most consumption of the plastics? We see it over here. 40% is used for packaging, and 23% for building and construction. This plastic all returns someday as waste. In Europe, you saw the consumption is 50 million tons, and 30 million tons come as a waste to the recyclers. Only 1/3 is recycled, and this is the slide of shame, the wall of shame, because 42% is still incinerated and 23% is still landfilled, not in the Netherlands, but even more in the south part of Europe. So in the final years of my work, I will try to decrease these numbers and increase, of course, the recycling percentage. The most important slide from my presentation is this slide, because plastics are blamed for all misery in the world. Almost every problem which is caused in the world is addressed to plastics. But this is, of course, not true. If you look at this slide, this is produced by Kim Ragaard. She is a professor at Maastricht University. You see that there are no alternatives. If we would go to glass, metal, paper, etc., then we would have 4 times more mass needed. We would use 2.2 more energy, and we would create much more CO2. So plastic is fantastic. In the Netherlands, we start our plastic recycling chain with washing and grinding. We do not do the collection, and we do not do the sorting, but we start with washing and grinding. This is done at AKR. This is our washing grinding plant. The input you see on the left is the bales of recognizable products, which is your margarine tub, yogurt cup, mayonnaise tube, whatever. You see it in real shape over here, and this is washed and grinded in our plant. Finally, in the end, we will keep up with a nice washed flake. We lose in the process all the disturbing materials like PET, aluminium, glass, sand, stones, etc. They will all sink in the wash tank. The biggest advantage of PP is that it floats. So we separate it from the other fractions. This is our plant in Vroomshoop, the PP recycling plant. And we recycle here 45,000 tons. And for Veolia, this is called the Center of Excellence. Our input comes 2/3 from packaging waste and 1/3 comes from hard plastics, as we call them. They are coming from the communities where you can throw away your plastic waste at a Saturday morning. Once entered in our plant, there is a good laboratory who tests all the materials, classifies the materials, and where we start with flake sorting. After flake sorting, we do the blending in huge bunkers. Each contains 100 tons of material. You can say a lot about virgin, but it is at least consistent. So this is one of the main properties we need to duplicate. This is for us the so-called kitchen. There is a process engineer, a chief cook, running around who is making the recipes. Finally, material is sent to the compounder, to the extruder, and it becomes a granulate. And don't think that an extruder is a magical thing. What really counts is shit in and shit out. So you need to see to it that you put real good quality into the extruder. Finally, in the end, we get a granule, and from this granule, for ages already, these products are made. Typical flower pots, transport boxes. And this is a very common material where the 100% recyclate is fully accepted. These products all come back and will be new waste again and new input for us. And then often the question rises, how many times can you recycle the plastics? And I say infinity, because every time we take in material what comes in for the second, third, fourth, fifth time, we dilute it with material which is virgin. If you look at the bill, you would not say it is virgin, but for us it is virgin because it's the first time it is recycled. So it has very good performance. And we use this 2/3 with the 1/3, and we can keep up with the properties. Not an issue. We do a lot of co-development with our customers. For example, this is a project which started already 15 years ago for Philips, where they wanted to make a vacuum cleaner of recyclate, which they did. And you saw the vacuum cleaner change, because it was in the beginning, it had all fancy colors, blue, red, green. And finally, it became more and more black, because black was the color of the recyclate. So only minor details stayed virgin and in colors. And this is now, of course, in that time, Philips did that because, I don't believe it is the environment, but they did it for the price advantage, because our material was 20% cheaper than virgin. And I just found out, and I was a bit angry about that they got a premium for this vacuum cleaner because it was made of recyclate. So you can imagine what the real reason was for making these vacuum cleaners of recycled material. This is an example of a packaging where we can put back the recycled material. This is a non-food packaging. This is for dishwashing tablets. The funny part was this packaging should be odorless. So we worked 2 years on that to get it odorless. And then within 0.001 second, the complete packaging smelled like dishwashing tablets. And then I got a new challenge and a new task to get rid of the smell. Funny part, but this is how these big brand owners operate. One of the most successful developments we did is the paint bucket. In the past, I always say now, in the past, you saw white paint buckets in the shops, but they transformed into gray. And even the gray of the bucket is limited because it's only this small part on top under the lid, which is recognizable as recyclate. There is a complete in-mold labeling covering the packaging. So I made a personal fight of it to stop use of virgin plastic for paint buckets, and now the rest is history. A lot of customers are switching over to this product. It's 100% recyclate, and even the lid now today is made of recyclate, which is impressive because there is a top load on the lid, which makes it complex. And you have the I don't call the Dutch name, but you have the shaker where the paint is mixed with color. It's a very tough procedure. The product is shaked, and then you need to have a stable packaging. Lowering the carbon footprint. This is important. This is not readable, but the summary is, we found out that if you use recyclate, and this was a French study, you can save 9 times energy and you will produce 9 times less CO2. This is a very good figure because it is in France. They have nuclear power over there, and we wanted to check it for the Netherlands. We did that together with the NRK Recycling, the brand, the organization who is responsible for the recyclers. We did a study with CE Delft, and they just confirmed the figures. They are not that big advantage in the Netherlands, but I would say even half a kilo CO2 saving would be successful and would blame you or would ship you into the recyclate. This is 1 kilo CO2, which is saved for every kilo of recycling. These are the products made of recyclate, which have a double CO2 saving. These are also products made of 100% recyclate, but also used for very sustainable application. Here we see a solar panel holder, and this is a storage box for water. I will jump into that. These boxes are used underneath artificial playing fields. And water is poured in, and when the water vaporizes, the whole pitch is cooled. And that it goes as far as 26 degrees. So normally on that pitch, it would be 60 degrees, which is not real enjoyable to play football on. But while using this system, you can lower the temperature by 26 degrees. This is also done with the normal grass football pitch. And here you see Liverpool, who has all the crates installed underneath their playing field. And the water is put into the grate. And with the stone wall cones, which you see over here, water is transported automatically to the grass, which stays green. At the moment, 9 Premier clubs in UK play on this system, and even our neighbor Heracles in Almelo had to change from artificial to natural grass, and now uses this system as well. You can have this installed on top of a building. That's the other way around, where you collect rainwater, and then you can create new recreation space. And the advantage is by collecting water and vaporizing it, it cools down the building. Very sustainable application also for this kind of products, all made of 100% recyclate. The new opportunities and the new markets where we look at are the colors. In the past, we said you can get any color as long as it is gray. But now we are really looking into colors. When you look around, you see a lot of colors are used. Brand owners are completely fond of typical colors. So that's a market we want to enter now. And these are the caps of the shampoo bottles which could be produced of recyclate. The only problem is price, and that's not only a small problem, that's the biggest problem. I made this color for, let's say, Procter & Gamble for a shampoo bottle for the cap. They said, well done, very perfect job. We love it, but we won't buy it because it is too expensive. We will buy virgin. Colors, the new colors we developed. And this is the first who really jumped into it and said, okay, I like the glacier blue and the apple green. I will make transport boxes of it. So this is the first one. Although for him, the product is more expensive than if he makes it from virgin, he's really caring about sustainability. Finding new feedstock sources is also one of the goals we have. We have to look at other feedstock sources because only the plastics collected from the orange bin is too limited. So we need to look at all kind of plastics coming in the waste system. And that could be, example, the big bags. Carpets is very big problem because they are all incinerated and not recycled at all. So we look at this in a new project, which is also filed on the 20th of May, and hopefully we will be awarded for this project so we can do it. We look at the PP coming from the end-of-life vehicles to use it again for the new compounds needed. We must have a ban on incineration. We must stop burning valuable stuff. It's crazy if you look at that, how much is incinerated. Ban on exportation. Still materials are going to the Far East. We must keep them here. We must find technical solutions for it to deal with it in Europe and to use it as a feedstock again. The new upcoming EPR scheme, so the extended producer responsibility, will help for that. So if you are responsible for your own product to be recycled, that will definitely help. The polluter needs to pay. That's quite obvious, and not the recycler. One of the new projects we are in, this is the so-called novel technology project team. We must try to make bottle caps to bottle caps. That's one of the examples in the project. And to give you an idea about the potential for a bottle cap, because you see it 3, 4, 5 perhaps per day yourself. But if you look at the complete world situation, then bottle caps and bottles produced per minute is 1 million. Per hour, it's 60 million. And you count it up, you come to the incredible amount of bottles per year of 5 billion. Times the 2.5 grams of the cap, that means we are speaking about 1.3 million tons of only bottle caps. So if we could take them back, and they are collected separately, so we could take them back. The only problem is that they are HDPE and PP caps together. And we still talking about command-driven standards and talking about uniformity. This is crazy because everybody decides for themselves to use HD or PP. That makes it complex. But the amount of material is huge. And if we could only recycle that, we could give that back to the food application and make it a new bottle cap again. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Gerrit. Thank you for sharing your decade-long experience, and also, as Harry already did, by talking about cars. So it brings us to our own life, I would say. You went even further by also sharing with us which type of consumer kind of products which we use on a day-to-day basis, I think, are can also be produced with recyclate, but it comes with a lot of challenges. And as you also shared with us, not only technical challenges, but also commercial and operational challenges, all of which have to be overcome to make this a success. Thank you very much again. Then we go to our last expert, Frans Bekkers, who is a co-founder, managing partner, and owner of many organizations and initiatives. So I would say a real entrepreneur. He has a background in waste management companies, but now has a primary focus on circularity and digital product passports. I myself am very interested in what Frans has to share. I hope you are too. Frans, can you please take us through your presentation and share your insights on this topic?
Thank you very much, Geoffrey. Very good to have this meeting today. For me, the challenge to, after three excellent speakers, also to go into some other content. I hope the attention is still there. I will do my utmost on achieving that. Well, in the past years, unluckily, a lot of the on the domain of sustainability and circularity was hijacked by, I would say, compliance consultancy firms, and had nothing to do with the content and the economic value of materials. And I would like to take you into this journey. A little bit on ourselves. We are in the midst of creating circular systems and concepts. So 3 types of activities: circular strategies, products, and concepts for various companies. Also, always from a material perspective. We make it work in practice. So we organize reverse logistics. We connect to recycling solutions or try to find new ones together with the industry, and try to find next use applications. And there is the big challenge for a lot of materials. And that all has to be supported, because it makes no use to develop circular concepts and products if you don't have a system behind, among which a system of a digital product passport. We started with that in 2013, started developing in 2015. In 2018, we had the first applications ready, and in 2020 we decided to build it all new again, because then you know how to do it. And we're at the very moment where more than 20,000 digital product passports, e-passports, are in the market, but that's just a drop on the total, on the real scale that has to be developed. And we are connected to TI Coast. Very happy with that. To connect I would say the in-depth content on characterization and analysis to the world we are working in. Well, so my contribution will be on the uniform nomenclature and DPP. Well, you could say that's a boring. These are boring topics, but I hope to convince you that these are the fundamentals to really create circular systems and create a feedstock for Europe. Because, as you can see, we have macroeconomic challenges on the European continent. On one hand, we know all about the Draghi report and the reindustrialization we would like to establish from that. And on the other hand, unluckily, we have to rearm Europe and preferably also done by a European industry. And that leaves a tremendous burden on the feedstock supply we need for Europe. And maybe you know that depending on the material group, you're looking at that between 60 and 80% of all the feedstock is coming from other continents, and in the field of the rare earth metals, more than 95% of the feedstock is coming from other continents. So only from that reason alone, we should very much increase the recycled content in our products. And so from a pure economic perspective, the recycling rates should go up. And if we would double the current percentages, then even then it will, well, for the medium term and maybe also not for the long term, it will not be enough to really be, let's say, autonomous on feedstock supply for our continent. So, and for that reason, we started on a project together with Coast on how can we increase the information value of recovered materials to be able to enlarge the percentage of recycled content in products. And of course, by recovering materials, you get a shift from a less negative impact to a positive impact. And ultimately, we are able to develop sustainable business models. So our goal would be to use more recycled content in recycled materials in product on all the materials group, metals, minerals, biogenic materials. And today we will focus at plastics. A couple of years ago, we started a project, what we call the Holy Trinity, as the way forward to support circular systems and concepts. What does it mean? There's a lot of investigation and development going on circular product development. More and more reverse logistics systems are coming in place to get materials back, organized by companies or organized by EPR schemes. So more and more materials are getting back. Recycling technology, we have seen it have been developed, especially plastics recycling technology have been developed tremendously in the last 50 years, I would say. So the technology is there and is still increasing. But then we see that all recyclers say, okay, I have the technology, I have the volumes, but I don't have a market to send it to, because the producers that have an obligation from an EPR perspective for the end of use of their products, they do not always want to receive also the recycled content to get it in new products again. So for a lot of recyclers, it's very difficult to find applications for the recycled content. And one of the instruments maybe we think could help to increase that is to increase the information value of recycled content. And that was what we call in this Holy Trinity, as Harry explained, on the characterization. We still think there's a world to be won on to have a next level characterization and analysis for recycled content. There's also a lack of a uniform nomenclature for name giving for recycled materials, and then the recording in the digital product passport. And allow me to go a little bit deeper in these aspects. So on the uniform nomenclature, maybe you know that for virgin materials, for prime materials, the coding is clear, the names of the materials are clear, and because of this coding and because of this name, every buyer knows where to use a certain plastic in an application and how it behaves in an application and how it is to be used. That's a development of, let's say, for the last 70 years, and everything has on a granular level has been recorded. And when we look at recycled content, there is still a batch by batch business. For example, I recycle 10 tons of polypropylene. I take a sample. I give a sample to a potential customer. The customer does a test for a specific application, and then say, okay, I can use that. The price is dealt upon, and for the next batch, the same process takes place again. And where we are used in the world of the virgin of the prime materials, that the process quality of the supplying company is a guarantee for the product quality. In the recycling business, this is still not yet the case. And we think that amongst others, let's say a standardized characterization of recycled content could help here, together with a uniform nomenclature. And we know There are coatings also in the plastics recycling world, but in practice we see that not all companies are using these same codes, and everybody is able to give its own name. Well, we think that that's one of the reasons, apart from all the technological developments, that we don't have a mutual fundament supporting the total recycling challenge. Once we have found, let's say, the standardized characterization for recovered materials, once we have found a nomenclature in which we can read what kind of application families are suitable for this or that recycled content, then we say, okay, let's also put that in a digital product passport. But why a digital product passport? The reasons for that are various. There are already companies that use the digital product passport because they want to create their own recovered feedstock again, and they want to have a digital product passport supporting this their supply cycle, and by that they are able to add value to their product and or the underlying materials, and of course we have to be compliant. And what we saw in the last years, that compliance was the only reason for, let's say, 80% of the market to step into this topic. And now we see with the omnibus regulation that a lot of companies are just now waiting, and we see that the companies that really see the economic value of stepping into circular concepts are also connected to the phenomenon of the digital product passport to support the circular solutions. Yeah. So what does it do? This kind of digital product passport, and if you like, you can scan the QR code. This is an example of a material, of a recovered polyethylene aluminum combination from beverage cartons. So in the packaging environment, we already also made a digital product passport for the beverage cartons themselves. And these beverage cartons are being recycled, so the paper fiber is separated, and then the combination of the PE aluminum and sometimes also with the PP cap, as Gerrit explained, is still further processed, and this then the combined material of polyol, as it's called, this pellet, is being used in other products again, and also for these new applications, the digital product passports have been made. And so with this, you can secure the total supply cycle. So the analyzed materials are recorded, so you know what you have, what is in the product. The end of use and the next use is secured by instruction information how to deal with the product, the component, or the underlying materials in the end of use to be sure that it's available for a next use. Then it's automatically translated to impact figures for a limited set of impact KPIs, CO2, energy, water, and recovered material, and also for various scopes, because we know in this impact communication world, a lot of companies communicate on different scopes, cradle to gate, cradle to grave, and we extended it to the next round, what we call LCA plus. In the meantime, also, we have now demonstrated that you could integrate your safety data sheet administration together with a digital product passport. So we hope with that people recognize that it's not only a new phenomenon, let's say, put on our shoulders by the European Commission, but it has also a value in already existing activities. Yeah, sorry, where am I? No, over here. In the breakout sessions, I would like to go into deep how we can connect the practice between, let's say, our search for this uniform nomenclature and record it in a digital product passport, and specifically in the field of plastics recycling. I have to mention that we, in the consortium of, let's say, 6 companies, together with also 6 use cases from various companies, we will start an investigation project, hopefully now in summer or shortly after summer, on this holy trinity, on the standardized characterization of recovered plastics, put in a uniform nomenclature and recorded in a digital product passport. And we have chosen to do that by and say on an empiric level, and not by just doing a study for 20 years and then try to find a standard, but just together with a group of companies and knowledge organizations, to find a mutual view on how to develop this standardized characterization and this nomenclature, and then use case by use case develop a pathology to create a standard together. And so my call to you also would be, if you have specific questions on that, or you have specific materials that you would like to put into the market, but you see that you have a difficulty in communicating on specifications on a nomenclature with your potential customers, please address to us, and maybe we could take also this into a use case for future products. Jeffrey, looking at the time, I would say that would be my contribution. So we are fully into the time table. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks a lot, Frans, and also very good that you took the opportunity already to a call to action. Thank you very much for sharing your insights on how you see that the digital product passport can have a beneficiary role in the domain of circular plastics. Maybe if you can click once or twice, then I don't have to take over control anymore. But we are now at the break. So we have a 10-minute break. And if you click even to the next slide, Frans, you might have noticed that the chat box all of a sudden contains some information. In the chat box, you can find a direct link to the breakout sessions, which will start at 11:40 sharp. So you have 10 minutes time for a quick bio break or a quick coffee. As said, everybody is assigned to a breakout according to the preference you informed us about. If you really, really want to go to another, of course, you are obviously allowed to join another session. We have 3 breakout sessions. As you see on the screen, one by Rob on the practical implications of blending requirements, a second by Harry on the information value of recycled plastic, and a third combined one by Gerrit and Frans, who will take a deeper dive in the digital product passport for recycled plastics and recycling experiences. I hope to see you back at 11:40 in the breakout sessions, which will last 35 minutes, and then we wrap up and draw conclusions and have a call to action at 12:15. Thanks for now, and see you in a bit. Of wrap-ups from the 3 sessions. So Harry, maybe I can ask you, can you give back to the other people and 2 or 3 lines, the most insightful questions or insights or conclusions that we discussed?
Yeah, we talked a bit about specifications, characterization, etc. Also some generalistic themes. Not everybody was experienced with that, but we had some interesting things, especially from Dow Chemical, I think, of course, a very big company working on recycling. And what we learned is that often customers asked for recycled material, but of course you need those functional specifications, and that's a question of a case-by-case approach. So mixing in recyclate and see what you can tolerate in terms of processing and final properties. So it's a laborious approach, but it is how it works at this moment. Another thing I think what was very insightful, at least to me, somebody mentioned the outside world doesn't really understand the complexity of plastic recycling. They all see it's plastic, and why don't you use one single plastic? So I think from that perspective, it's also we can look at ourselves. We need to better explain the complexity of it to people who are not aware of plastics and compositional differences. Yeah, and finally, what you of course learn and see, and that's also my own experiences, the world is still strongly driven by compliancy. Many companies do not see yet maybe the potential advantage from a business perspective and distinguishing themselves from other companies. And customers are really not, most of them are not willing to pay a premium and still, yeah, leaning on virgin specs. So that's still a difficulty that we are continuously confronted with.
Thank you, Harry. Signs that we are still not only halfway in the learning curve, and this is definitely a transition we're in, with all the intricacies that go with it. Rob, maybe can I ask you to share a few words?
Yes, so I think when we talked about new legislation, use of recycled content, that we had a big discussion about how do we govern that and how can we actually inspect that people that are compliant are indeed doing the right things, but the people that are not compliant are being addressed on their non-compliance with new legislation coming into place. So this whole area of governance was very important. And then obviously there's a link to what are the data, what are the elements that companies need to have, and that's both the producer, so that's both the raw materials producer, the converter, as well as the client, and how do we certify that? So what level of certification is important? And therefore, I think external certification is really important. We should also, as companies, take our own responsibility there and make sure that that certification is in place. And that would then help the governing bodies to actually challenge the people that are not complying with our future sustainable and circular materials.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Rob. Then Frans or Gerrit.
Yeah, Gerrit asked me to do it.
Okay.
Well, we had a lot of discussion on, let's say, on one hand, of course, we are confronted with non-circular products, linear products, and especially in packaging, where we see a mixed bag of plastics that makes it difficult. And discussion of how could a digital product passport help in that. We also had a discussion on let's say where to put a physical identifier and to connect it to a digital product passport. Then the need and the necessity for a digital product passport also in the on the recycled content. Gerrit, amongst others, made the remark that they already have demand-driven solutions for their customers. So we had to discuss how can we lift that up to the next level, that you can retrieve generic standards for that, so that also that could help them grow the market. Well, I would say we see in this phase a difference between, let's say, material flows for dedicated materials on maybe mono or even sharper identified materials versus mixed materials, mixed plastics that have to be identified, and for which in this case, in this stage of the market and developments, is still very difficult. We had a little talk on how on the level of detail you would like to retrieve and what is the necessity and the use and the added value of the detail. Also from a policy making perspective. We had the cynical remark on that maybe policymakers would like to know how much bottles of L'Oreal are in the soccer field of Liverpool from what batch. And that's not the kind of detail, and so that was also a remark from Mark. They said, okay, let's make sure that and maybe that's also something for the plastic tafel, that that we manage expectations on what is possible, is technically possible, also what is technical useful at least. We didn't really come to one or other conclusion or a direction. It was more, let's say, a collection of ideas and thoughts, and and discussion on necessity. Right? There's still a lot has to be clarified also on these topics and the usefulness and the way forward.
All right. Thanks a lot, Frans. Then, Harry, I would like to ask you on
this is it.
last slide, our call to action.
Yeah,
We are
yeah.
here to make progress.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so what is clear from our opinion is that we still have a long way to go. What Jeffrey just said, we are in a transition, and for sure we are not even halfway. But we want to make progress, and we hope that you have the same feeling. And our feeling is we can make progress by collaborations. You cannot do those things alone. At least that holds for most companies. Maybe the very big ones can do their own program. And we have two parties now, both the Circular Plastics Initiative and TI Coast, and we are collaborating in that way, that are able to build on consortia and make very interesting project proposals from that. We have some experience. Coast has just been granted the project Reincarneer, which will be funded by the Joint Transition Fund in the southern part of Limburg, where we will be looking at the systematics of materials recognition, enhancing the information value via analytics and the product passport. Frans already invited you to bring in your use case when it comes to, for instance, nomenclature. We can be of help there. CPI has the CARP project, which has been granted. I'm not exactly aware about all the details. And CPI already also did their very best actually to meet the deadline this week, the deadline of CPNL, which had another subsidy round, and various projects were submitted to CPNL, for instance, the Replace project that will be diving into the challenges of electronics and end-of-life vehicle waste. And there is apparently also another project forwarded towards CPI called Next Peer. So we can be of help in building those consortia, but you may also be in a need of a more one-to-one collaboration, joining, for instance, the community of practice that we have at TI Coast, where we have an open discussion forum, also sometimes heading for smaller projects. So actually, because this is a team effort, our question to you is, please let us know if you are interested, maybe in a very concrete use case, maybe to talk a bit further. Please put your interests or your name in the chat here. You can also reach out to us via mail, and I think we will also do the other way around. We will approach you with a concrete question, but maybe somebody already wants to speak up or put some things in a chat. That's an open invitation to all of you at this very moment. And I don't know whether Frans or Jeffrey want to add some things to that.
No, thank you.
No, I think, as you said, we will get back to all the participants with a copy of the slides and a link to the recording of the plenary part of this webinar. With that said, I would very much like to thank the experts presenting. So Frans, Gerrit, Rob and Harry, thank you very much for sharing your insights and leading a breakout session. I would like to thank the audience for their participation, inputs, and presence in the call, and I'm very much looking forward to a follow-up to this webinar and the discussions we had and the topics discussed. And having said that, I would like to wish you a very nice afternoon, and for the day after tomorrow, a very nice weekend already.